This video just popped up in my recommended tab on YouTube and I thought it was a very interesting topic. It's called Why Canada's Northernmost Town Exists, and reading in the description of the video it says it's about this place, Grise Fiord. It's a place that is in northernmost Nunavut. It has 24 hours of light in the summer, 24 hours of darkness in the winter, and these remote towns in Canada is definitely something I have a keen interest in learning more about. I watched a video recently that was about the most remote towns in Canada. It was very intriguing, so many unique places. Due to the size of Canada, of course, there's so many remote places around here with their own unique cultures and ways of life. I want to learn about as much of them as possible. This seems like a perfect opportunity to do this. Grise Fiord. Tell me if you know about this place. Tell me if you've been here. Tell me if you've been to any of these remote places in northern Canada. But yeah, let's learn about this.
3,461 kilometers, or 2,150 miles from Canada's capital of Ottawa, lies Canada's northernmost permanently inhabited town, Grise Fiord. This small town in the northern region of Nunavut is just 1,500 kilometers from the North Pole and lies well into the Arctic Circle. With no roads connecting Grise Fiord to the rest of Canada, having one of the coldest climates in the world with an average temperature of just 2.3 degrees Fahrenheit or 16.5 degrees Celsius, and a polar winter which lasts for over 2 months, resulting in 24-hour darkness. You may be wondering why anybody would choose to live in this extreme civilization.
Yeah, tell me, I know that some people that have watched my videos before have lived in places like this. Tell me if you've lived in a place like this. What's it like? Especially those places with the long light and darkness. I can't imagine living there myself, especially like he mentioned, that there's no access to the rest of Canada by roads. There's no roads connecting this place. It must feel so cut off. It is so cut off. It really feels like, looking at this image, it looks like it's on the edge of the world. That in itself, me not even living there, it gives me a little bit of anxiety. I can't imagine living here. Maybe if you're antisocial, might be a perfect place, but yeah, tell me your experiences or people you know that have lived in places like this.
The settlement of Grise Fiord was created in 1952 by the Canadian government to establish Canadian sovereignty in the Arctic. Canada wanted to assert their dominance in the Arctic during the Cold War to take control of largely uninhabited land. The Canadian government promised improved living conditions for many of the Inuit tribe already living in the Nunavut region. The Inuit were assured plentiful wildlife, homes, and game to hunt, but as the Inuit were relocated to Grise Fiord, none of that was very true. The Inuit came into an Arctic tundra climate with no homes and very little food options available. To make matters even worse, the Inuit were promised to be returned to their original homes after a year of staying in Grise Fiord. But this offer later became withdrawn, as this would have damaged Canada's claim to sovereignty in the area.
Whoa. Okay, so that's actually quite a shock already. So they actually just made a town here for sovereignty of that land. I didn't realise it was Inuit people they moved there. I thought it may have just been other Canadians from the bigger cities, maybe moved there for like research or something, but it's actually just to claim land there. And the one there about promising to remove them after 1 year, but going back on that promise, almost like just locking them into that small, unconnected town. That's actually quite a scary thought.
It was clear the Inuit were either going to have to learn how to adapt, or death would surely follow. It wasn't until 41 years later, in 1993, where the Canadian government finally held hearings to investigate this relocation program that led to many Inuits' unfortunate death. The hearings resulted in the Canadian government finally giving $10 million in Canadian dollars to the residents of Grise Fiord to evenly distribute amongst themselves.
What would they even do with that money there? Is there anything to actually spend the money on? They're so far away from anything. I mean, how, even logistically, how do they get things there? Like, I know they got promised food and supposedly the government went back on that and maybe never provided according to this documentary, but how do they get anything delivered there?
Finally, in 2010, Canada issued a formal apology for the relocation, just a shy 58 years later after the relocation program was implemented. The population of Grise Fiord is currently 129 permanent residents. This is only one person less than the Grise Fiord population in 2011, which was 130 residents. Grise Fiord does receive some tourists each year, normally coming in for the summer months. The only way in and out of Grise Fiord is their singular airstrip that accompanies only one destination. This destination is Resolute, Canada, which is a 148-mile flight and only takes about an hour and a half. Resolute is the nearest settlement and is where many of the Inuit tribe were forced to relocate from during the Cold War. Canadian North is the only airline that services this flight, but doesn't offer it too often, with an average of just 9 flights in and out every month. Surrounded by snow-capped mountains, the Grise Fiord airstrip has one of the most difficult approaches for aircrafts that require only the most experienced pilots. Sometimes in the summer months, the bay will thaw and then the residents can use their fishing boats to reach nearby hunting grounds or to hunt mammals in the sea. Sea fishing is potentially the only reason the Inuit were able to survive in Grise Fiord, as after being relocated here in 1952, the Inuit discovered that they were very close to the beluga whale migration routes. These beluga whales would provide food for the entire community for many months and were easy to preserve given the extremely cold, freezer-like temperatures. Aside from the villagers' own boats, once a year a Canadian government ship, known as a sea lift, would arrive in Grise Fiord with much needed supplies and fuel.
Can you imagine the time that big ship comes in there? It must be something like this special occasion, something we take for granted every day, getting access to so many goods and foods and different things. This one time a year they have to wait for a boat from the Canadian government, but apart from that you actually see like a great example of self-sufficiency from these people. I guess maybe they learned that in the other town that they actually came, or the other city or settlement or community that they came from, because that was also very remote as well. But imagine being taken away from your community, moved 140 miles to an even more remote community location, and just forced to fend for yourself. I guess this is a situation that most people will never find themselves in, but the fact that they did that and managed to survive, I actually think that's an amazing example of human strength, man.
Supplies for new infrastructure or vehicles would come in once a year on this sea lift. This is quite the difference from most communities in North America, where Amazon delivers just about any product to you in a matter of a couple days.
Yeah.
As for land travel, most residents use all-terrain vehicles in the summer, such as ATVs and pickup trucks. Other than during the summer months, the main modes of transportation include snowmobiles and dog sledding. The economy of Grise Fiord is rather small, with a town only having one grocery store. Grise Fiord has a cooperative store that is essentially a grocery store that is owned by the people who use it. The residents of Grise Fiord get to decide on what foods and products will be stocked on the shelves, where those items are purchased, and the quality standards that both the products and the vendors need to meet. This cooperative store is usually run by the residents of Grise Fiord, but the employees hadn't been filing financial papers, attending meetings, and most importantly, failing to stock the groceries. Eventually, this prompted the territorial government to take over and run the cooperative store. The residents of Grise Fiord obviously weren't in favor of the Canadian government taking over given their past, so the residents of Nunavut's northernmost town are hoping to take back their co-op. For many of them, having control of the co-op serves as a symbol of the community's independence, something that they value greatly.
Yeah, that's actually true. Something like that, you know, it's the only grocery store there. They had control. They were treated so shoddily by the Canadian government, and then for the Canadian government to come in there and like take control of it and try and assert their power just by this small piece of like this small thing that belongs to them. I feel that's actually unfair in a way. Like if it was causing problems, maybe it could be better managed. I don't know. Tell me what you think about that situation.
The community leader mentioned that they would like to deal with the territorial government as little as possible. The government having control of the local co-op hasn't been all that bad, however. Many important items such as milk and perishables that hadn't been on shelves for a while are now back on the shelves and available for purchase. In addition, the government has been able to keep the co-op store consistently open, something that wasn't happening when the store was independently owned. The government currently has a 6-month lease on the co-op store and is able to renew the lease for 3-month periods. The Canadian government doesn't want to hand back control of the co-op until an audit is completed. Because the community is so small, it is no one person's fault that the store went into debt, but until an audit is completed, the residents need to have a community meeting, and the community needs to find out how much debt the co-op has accumulated. Aside from this local convenience store, another source of the residents' income relies on guided hunting and outfitting operations on nearby land. The region that Grise Fiord is in, Nunavut, actually features some of the most exotic and highly prized hunting in the world. Mammals that live in this region include extremely dangerous polar bears, abundant caribou, walruses, and the healthiest and least threatened population of wolves in the world. Aside from hunting from these mammals, residents will sell traditional clothing, carvings, and Inuit crafts typically to outsiders visiting this Arctic community. There's not a ton of opportunity for economic growth in the Grise Fiord area, especially due to the frequent avalanches and rockfalls of the nearby mountains, which limits the room for expansion. One benefit to living in Grise Fiord, however, is that the community is extremely safe from crime. A Simon Fraser University study found that Grise Fiord has the lowest rate of criminal offenses of all communities in Canada examined in 1992. This is good to know considering Grise Fiord only has a singular emergency vehicle, which is actually out of service with a missing wheel until a mechanic is able to fly in and repair the pickup truck used for emergency services.
Whoa. This is one reason I really enjoy learning about Canada, because Canada is so unique in this sense that it has communities like this. Being from somewhere so small geographically like Scotland, where you can travel like in a day to like every part of it, and everywhere's just kind of like average places, nothing too exciting. A place like Canada that has these pockets of life, these small communities that are like, one emergency vehicle that has a broken wheel, meaning there's no emergency vehicle, they have to wait for a mechanic to come in. There can't be too many countries in the world where this is a situation that occurs.
As mentioned before, Grise Fiord is one of the coldest communities in the entire world, with an average yearly temperature of just 2.3 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 16.5 degrees Celsius. The winters last almost the entire year, while the summers are very cool and short. February is the coldest month on Grise Fiord, with an average temperature of negative 34 degrees Celsius or negative 29.2 degrees Fahrenheit, with the warmest month being July with an average temperature of just 2 degrees Celsius and 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Grise Fiord is often referred to as the place that never thaws, given the temperature rarely breaks the freezing mark. The community has built water and plumbing pipes above ground to avoid the pipes from freezing. Water has to be continuously running through these pipes to avoid them from freezing up. At the end of the day, it is truly hard to conceptualize how difficult it is to live in Canada's northernmost town. Grise Fiord probably wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Canada's desire to claim control of the Arctic during the Cold War. Fortunately, the residents of Grise Fiord have developed a frontier-like mindset that has helped them to survive and prosper in such a harsh tundra-like climate. All 129 residents feel as though they are one big family and couldn't imagine living elsewhere. Do you think you could live in Grise Fiord?
Yeah, tell me if you think you could live there. I don't think I could. I just have amazing respect for the people that do live there, especially everything they went through, being put there with, I guess you could say, false promises, and just making the most of it, and actually being able to survive. Yeah, I'm just like surprised and amazed by that. Seeing people there kind of thriving in a way, all these children there, having a young child myself, I just can't imagine living in a place like that. But tell me what you think about that situation, what you think about this place, tell me what you think about places like this, but also tell me what you think about the Canadian government's role in this situation. Do you think they could have handled it better? What do you think about how they're even handling not just the initial moving of the Inuit people there, but even just a thing like that, how they deal with the co-op? I guess there's good positives and negatives to it. It seems like it's working in a way with them having control, but like taking away the control from the people might have seemed a bit unfair at the time. But yeah, tell me what you think about this. That was a very interesting documentary. Thanks.